Good morning. Welcome to the May 9th, 2025 meeting of the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. I'm Councillor Jeff Rawadi. I'm the committee's chairperson. With me this morning, we have Councillors Allard and Councillor Lukes. We also have members of our senior public service with us. We have Brendan Harris, the committee clerk, and Tracy Graham, our chief financial officer. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and international homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Councillor Lukes, could you move that the minutes of the meeting held on April 17, 2025 be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye. Opposed?
Carried. There are no registered delegations this morning. All right. So that takes us to the hearings. We'll go straight into reports. South Winnipeg Recreation Campus.
Okay. So joining us this morning to report are Jeff Patton, Director of Assets and Project Management, Brad Erickson, Manager of Municipal Accommodations, and Brent Canuta, Manager of Project Delivery. How are you, Jeff?
Yep. Great. Good morning, councillors. So I'm gonna turn the report right over to Brent, and he can get right into the update for you, and then we can are available for any questions.
Good morning. So this is quarterly report number 12. This is report ending February 28th, 2025. Just a few key highlights to start. The project is set to achieve the 60% design completion milestone in coming days. A class 3 cost estimate was received earlier this year that indicated that the project is on budget with respect to the council approved funding. And construction of the vocational wing addition, Pembina Trails Collegiate, is progressing on schedule and budget. I'd like to begin with funding. So the forecasted total project cost remains unchanged at $126 million. That's a class 3 estimate. While the approved budget remains at $118.763 million. The difference in approximately $7 million forecasted is attributable to the Child Care Center, which is funded by Manitoba. The class 3 estimate for the Recreation Center component was updated in March this year, indicated a total construction cost of approximately $60 million and a total project cost of $94.3 million. This closely matches the city apportioned budget of the rec facility, that being $94 million, as identified in the funding forecast on page 6 of this admin report. Some financial details to share. The approved contracts and contract costs provided in table 1, they've been updated to reflect expenditures to the end of February. Those total $10.03 million. And contract adjustments, we call them over expenditures, to date total $540,800. And we've awarded no new contracts in the reporting period. It was previously requested that the public service apprise the committee of city staffing commitment to the project. That information respecting 3 municipal accommodation staff, including myself, are provided on page 2 of this admin report. I'd like to discuss schedule briefly. There are no schedule changes to report. The procurement schedule and the status of deliverables will continue to be updated as the project advances. Moving on to risk. In terms of new risks identified, trade tariff impacts are of course at the forefront, as in other capital projects the city is managing to date. However, they've been difficult to quantify at the previous time. At the current time. In other projects, some minor tariff increases have been experienced. However, the cost amount of tariffs is generally unconfirmed until goods or materials cross the border and are subject to tariff calculations. For public engagement, an open house took place on March 22nd at Bison Run School. It was well attended. I was there myself. The results of the public feedback, including an online survey, will be published on the City Projects Engage website in the near future. And finally, for subsequent events after the report period end date, the project is now in the detailed design phase. Design services will continue into the fall, And the project team is working towards tendering a construction contract in late 2025 for their rec center and the childcare center facilities. The public service is also expecting to obtain a class 2 cost estimate in May. And finally, construction of the vocational wing addition, Pembina Trails Collegiate, is at approximately 35% to 40% level of completion. That project is on schedule and on budget with minimal cost adjustments to date. And that's my report for this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councilor Lutz?
Just with the childcare facility, what is the difference that the province is making up in the final cost of it?
At the moment, it's projected to be about $7 million. However, the final cost won't be ascertained until tender time. So we do have a funding commitment for the difference from the province of Manitoba. So at this time, it's a bit of an open amount to be confirmed at time of tender.
Right, but you must have an idea of what is being built and an approximate cost.
Yes.
And you're saying it's 7 million?
No, that's the funding shortfall relative to the current approved funding that the city has in place. And so the approximate value for construction is about $15 million.
About 15 million.
Yeah, but again, it could change.
Okay,
That's for the specifically for the childcare.
yeah,
Yes.
for the childcare. And then now you said in May that the class 2 estimate would be ready,
Yes.
like at the end of May or when in May?
We're to receive the 60% design submission next week, and then the class estimate will follow probably the week later. And then the public service needs time to review the estimate.
And then when will we wait to hear what that estimate is when your review is done? Do we wait till next quarter or?
That would be standard practice. However, we can certainly convey that information through the director's office if requested.
Right, I think that we can do that. Do I request that now or what?
Sure, we can provide that, Counselor. So like, the goal would be as well, if we are off budget with this next estimate, obviously, we're gonna have a discussion about what's next, just like we did when we had the class 4 and needed to go pencils down and do a budget adjustment or a scope adjustment. So we'd have to come back to council.
So how long do you think it will take the public service to determine the review, finalize the review of the information that you get back?
Within a week of receiving it. So my goal is the end of May.
Yeah, then we would bring that up, like, we can share that information with
Sure.
the committee and if we're tracking off scale or off budget, then we'll have to determine an administrative report that would have to come back up and seek direction.
Sure. So just talk a little bit about the review process or what you're discovering with the province. You weren't aware of this. It's noted in one of the risks, I believe, here.
Councillor, I believe you're referring to the approval time period.
The approval time periods, right? So what does that mean? Like mandates a pre-tendering cost review approval of projects. So where in this process does that kick in? When do you when you get the tender back?
Yes, so the process would be we receive the tender results. We share the information with our provincial stakeholders. They take the costing information back, assess it against their budget, and then we'll be given the green light or otherwise to proceed with an award of contract. But in tandem, the city will prepare an award report and submit to RIS for council approval.
Or what? Sorry,
Award report.
award report.
Yes. So those two processes would run concurrently.
And so you said that the province needs to review it against their budget. What does that mean?
Well, we understand that the province has a prescribed budget amount for the childcare center, and it's also,
And for the rec campus?
and, well, I think the rec campus budget is pre-established by the ASIP agreement.
Right.
But they also, their budget is also affected by the cost of the vocational wing. So that amount is known, it's been tendered. However, we do not understand what the total budget available is that the province holds for both assets.
So we're taking a risk.
No, they've indicated that they will cover the cost in a letter to the city. But they haven't told us directly, said we've got X amount. They're gonna have to go through their approval processes. The provincial approval processes, once we get the tender results in. Because council's directed us that you know, these costs need to be covered. And we're not paying for the childcare facility. So so we have to go through them. They, you know, just like we did with the vocational wing, there was a significant amount of effort from our former CEO, current CFO, sorry, and a lot of folks getting together to make sure, because that was that project, I can't remember, closed several millions over their allocated budget that they identified to council back in 2020 when this was actually approved. So,
So where do you foresee a delay in the sense of you're going to write the award report? It's going to go through the channels to council, and let's assume council approves it. Then what happens? If we haven't heard back from the province at that point, we're not concerned because they have said they're going to pay for it. Is that what I'm
we
hearing?
won't proceed without without the province's approval. We
With
won't.
the vocational wing, where you had assurances from the province, they would cover the amount before we came to council for award.
But we don't have that with the childcare facility?
No, we'll do that.
No, it's, they've indicated that, but not indicated the budget. But we have, it's going to be more money than what they've allocated.
Right.
So they have to approve that. So hopefully it's all running in parallel and, you know, because it takes us between 1 to 3 months to get into the agenda. So the project will be, the bids will be open for acceptance for a reasonable time while we go through this process. So as Brent said, we're going to be careful. We can't put the city in a potential situation and award this, because the contract for this is with the city, not with the province, right? So we have to make sure the funding is all in order.
So according to Mr. Erickson's schedule that you gave me, the breakdown, the city and the preview review of construction tender submissions will be this December to January.
That's correct. Yeah, if we're out for tender, and then approximately 1 month or so for the tender period and results being received, then yes, we'll do that review.
So you're saying like you're gonna put the tender out in November and the tender closing date is in December, that you feel that that's enough time for whoever wants to bid on this project to bid on it? Like, did we expression of interest?
That's correct. We've pre-approved qualified contractors for this. Oh, sorry.
We have an
sorry
RFQ prepared, but we're waiting until a little closer to tender to issue it.
Sorry about that. Yes, we are going to pre-approve them. So yes.
So it says here that you're going to do that September to October.
Yes.
Is that what?
Plan to issue the RFQ request for qualification in September.
Okay. Okay.
And so the time of the, provincial review has been factored into the schedule that's in table 2 here. We've accounted for that in our schedule.
Okay, and then I guess just have a couple other questions I had on, you identify here on the approved over expenditures. So these are still yet within budget, right? They're in over expenditures of the amount that was awarded.
Relative to the original contract values, so for instance, for consulting, and the over expenditures are paid using the contingency funding that was approved as part of the overall budget.
Right. So just help me understand how Diamond Schmidt has a $400,000 overage. What was that all about?
Well, there's been a redesign of the site layout. As you recall, we went through that last year. We rejigged the orientation of the facility and the childcare around the property. We've also incurred some changes to accommodate the province's request for the childcare center. So primarily, at the outset, we envisioned that we'd be sharing services and utilities between the two facilities. And the province subsequently came back and said, we want everything separate. So we've incurred costs to accommodate that. Those costs will be recovered from the province.
They will be.
Yes.
Approximately what percentage of the $380,000 was that? Was it?
I'd have to get back to you, Counselor. I don't recall offhand.
And then maybe just talk about Crozier, Kilgore and Partners.
Yes, so they've been retained as the prime commissioning agent for the project.
As the what?
Building commissioning. So
Right.
they commission the mechanical, electrical, and building envelope systems through construction. But in actuality, they are hired at the outset of design. And so again, there have been some design change recommendations, and so we've reflected that in the scope increase with their services as well.
And then you keep a running total of what percentage is provincial and what is city and.
Yes, we have 3 silos of funding that we're managing in the project, one for the rec facility, one for childcare, one for the vocational wing. And all the capital accounts have been structured in the same way to provide complete transparency.
And when you tender this out, what sort of clause, I guess maybe we could talk about that at number 4, what we're writing into contracts. I sort of missed the last update on what we're writing into contracts, allowing for tariffs and all this other stuff. Okay. Okay. Well, I look forward to the end of May.
Councillor Allard?
Just in terms of protecting the city guys' future costs. Do we know what the agreement will look like in terms of the deferred maintenance for the building? Like, is that covered as well, or is it only the upfront capital costs?
So, yeah, we're working on transfer agreements to transfer these assets to the province. So we're working on the vocational wing right now. So once that's gonna be, we have a kind of interaction point through the warranty because the contract, the construction contract's with us and the province. So we're not gonna be involved with maintenance for that. We're not gonna be involved with any maintenance on the childcare facility, even though it's bolted onto our facility. We're going that, it helps, the systems are gonna be separate. They'll be they will have to maintain their building and we will have nothing to do with it, even though it's on our property. Sorry, and maybe Brent will clarify if I
Just to repose the question, are there any beliefs where the province should have a prorated percentage contributions to that?
Yes, short answer, yes, and it's really about the shared site facilities, and that includes parking. There's some shared right of way, like for sidewalk approach into the facilities. So the city is developing a joint use agreement to deal with shared costs, not only for the investment, but also for operations and maintenance. That will also include grass cutting, snow clearing in the winter. So there are some intricacies that are involved, but in terms of the hard assets, they're completely separate.
Yeah, we're interested in the intricacies. And what metric, I mean, maybe this is too detailed, but like, is it based on the square footage of the facilities? Is it based on the number of potential visitors to the site? How do you decide what the proration is?
It's a unique situation. It's a blend of 2 things. One is fixed areas such as parking, The childcare has a designated allowance of parking spots, which are located in the general parking area of the campus. And then there are other areas that are going to be percent ratios, like grassed areas, sidewalk, curb, gutter, right away.
And does it allow for inflation too and all kinds of metrics like that? The agreement?
Yeah,
Like in 20 years' time, are we gonna be at the same sort of prices as we are?
I'd expect not. The agreements are probably gonna be living entities, throughout the lives of the facilities, but we're starting out with joint use, a joint asset agreement that has yet to be defined, like it's.
Like the duration of it, will there be a duration and then there'll be renegotiating times? Will it be like that?
I expect there will be, but we're not at that point. I can't tell you at this time.
So don't we have to, but we have to get all this done by the time it opens, right?
Yeah, we're working with legal services. At this time.
How many parking spots are allocated to the childcare facility?
It's approximately 30. I don't recall the exact number.
And they'll have to register or something?
There's gonna be signage. The nuances will be figured out between the 60 and 100% design phase and ongoing negotiations with the province about what they want to see and what the city's interests are.
Right, but okay, so that's great. So I've had a lot of experience with parking in childcare facilities. And many people are required to run childcare facilities. So in order of fairness to everyone, there needs to be some sort of registration of people associated with the childcare. They must have to register their plate or something when they're there, because from what my experience is, and especially because this is a super center, this is 200 or 196 kids, right? It's 196. And yeah, so how do we have input into that to make sure that something like that happens?
Well, I expect that we're going to liaise with other subject experts in the city, possibly from real estate, to provide guidance, maybe from past precedents. However, if you're offering, I'd certainly like to invite you to offer insight into how.
Sure, I'd love to. I would love to, or I would love to have share the experience of South Point School and the parking and the childcare facility there.
Great.
And because it impacts so much. Anyways, okay, that would be great.
Just get out on that, Councillor Brody.
You want to be part of that?
Well, yes, and you hear an announcement, there's gonna be 5 new police officers funded by the province for 5 years. It's great. And then the city continues the funding of those officers for the years to come. So I'm really interested in seeing, and I doubt there's precedence for this, but full cost recovery of the shared use, like with whatever the appropriate prorated amount is, and whatever the future cost will be. Because in our reports, we do build in inflation on financial impacts, and I would hope that whatever it is that we have also does that. And I don't know if there is precedent. I mean, if there is, I'd love to look into it, but if there is precedent, it may not be in the interest of the city as well.
I personally can't think of a existing situation where there's a daycare on city property. There could be. But again, we'll take it back to our subject experts and come to determination. Stakeholders like locally with the province and potentially Trail School Division.
Right, but this could be, if this hasn't been done before, then it could be a template, a best practice.
How many joint use agreements do we actually really have with schools? We probably don't know that, but that's something that's
Community services.
gone on forever and a day. Okay.
All right. Somebody want to move the update?
Report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lutz. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. Okay, Save the Tell over the red.
So joining us today from Public Works for the next two reports are Jason Ruby, the finance manager, and Michelle Stainton, the project management engineer.
Good morning. How are you guys this morning? Excellent. Go Jets, go.
Better with the wind tonight.
Yeah, definitely need one.
That bode well for the home team.
I
Gonna
don't,
do it.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Gonna be good.
I'll be there cheering them on. All right.
I'm ready. Construction. Sure. Okay, so this is the Think-Tel one we're doing?
Yes.
Okay, this is the 10th quarterly report, on the same Tel, or the rehabilitation. About 97% completed on schedule, and, it says 102% of the adopted budget, at the same time as saying on adopted budget, but the percentages on the adopted budget and the are on the amended budget. Roughly like 90% of the amended budget.
Right.
So on budget, we'll say.
Okay.
The total-
Is there an easier way of saying that?
Pardon?
Just saying, is there an easy way of saying that?
We follow the template, so
Follow the template.
On
from infrastructure planning.
Perhaps there is, but.
We're at 102% of the original budget, not the updated budget.
Correct.
Correct.
But the council has technically adopted the new budget, no? Yes.
I'm
The
gonna
way-
point-
the way
I'm
it
gonna
reads, the
finance
way
and
it
say the
reads.
difference between amended.
It
and
looks like an
adopted.
R.
We're doing good. It's,
Okay.
as of expenditures to date are 53 million, and 700,000 and change, and the total project budget is currently 59. I think even the numbers here, you can see that it's not 100%. 59,874,000. Still estimated to completion at that, budget number. The increase in budget is attributed to recent construction inflation and some unanticipated peers ability.
Pardon me, unanticipated?
Unanticipated.
Oh, the peers, but yes, the peers, we remember the peers.
So the girder works shut down for the end of the season, and they will continue during Q1 of 2025, which is not quite done yet. I learned a quick lesson on the quarters on these projects. But they have begun that work as of now since this reporting. North and south tunneling lighting works were completed, and the pathway lighting installation in Bell MTS was carried out as well. There's also was discussed to be the last report, but the next report, which we decided that the next report will be the last report for this one, for this project.
Yeah, so we've, completed about 50, as Michelle said, we've completed about $53.7 million work. There's additional $6.1 million to work to come over the next construction season, to completion of the project. And-
Like this coming
Yeah,
construction
yeah.
season, yes, okay.
And we're forecast to be on budget, but the contingency is tight.
So we expect this to be fully completed at the end of this construction season?
Yes.
Yeah, there's always gonna be some odds and sods that spill over and stuff like landscaping and things here and there. Yeah,
Okay.
we expect the bulk of it to be done by the end of this year.
Are they doing an art opening? Didn't they put some art there?
As of this report, they had,
On page 17 at the end. I don't know what the status of the art is. Do we know what the status of the art is?
they have,
On page 7, under subsequent events, after the report period end date, is that there was a call for artist submission. that have been received, evaluated, and narrowed down to the 3 best responses. And where those 3 artists will be invited to submit proposals for art installations coming up.
Planned date installation 2026, I believe.
I don't have any questions.
Just on the utilities, like, we pay them,
Depending on the situation,
because it seems like they're getting an opportunity to upgrade their stuff.
depending on the utility and the situation, it's, in some cases, we have an agreement with Manitoba Hydro on what parts of costs are shared, whether we're moving them, whether they're upgrading them.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the telecoms, because my negotiating position would be, no, you can't. Or I don't wanna do it, so,
We are in discussions with, certainly with Bell about, what to do with that.
so we don't know.
Well, generally,
Like, we don't know, like, I guess my question is like,
The CRTC has a position on how that goes, and they do not get to upgrade their plant
at our cost.
municipal expense, correct.
but generally there's conduits running through bridge infrastructure projects, and we would have conduits before. When we rehab the bridge, we would, you know, keep those same, says generally the same conduits there. It's their expense to run all their gear through that.
I guess it's
And other
probably not material.
other kinds of expenses would be, say, if they had like call it transformer, but like some infrastructure that needs to be relocated off of the bridge. As Jason said, putting a conduit on the bridge is incidental essentially, but some of the stuff that was surrounding it may need to be adjusted. So as we're in discussions with MTS on how to appropriate those costs, we have an interim sort of informal agreement that we will retroactively, once we have an actual agreement, how those costs should be apportioned, those retroactively returned to and adjust them.
I don't know what the magnitude of the costs are, but looking at paying back things retroactively based on informal agreements doesn't
I just don't
ring,
really
doesn't
want to
ring.
discuss this at a public meeting.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
Just,
That's fair. I think that's confidential. I understand that. How does this fare relative to other bridge rehabilitation projects in recent history? Is this a success story? Is it?
I think it's a success story.
Yeah.
There was some quite real complications with that pier. Erosion, I think.
Mhm.
Probably get that correct. But yeah, and it appears to go, yes. But they tackled that pretty quickly and all things considered, cost effectively. Because they had some extra challenges. Bridges often do because there is so much that's not seen until you start poking at it, so.
Yeah. And on the scope, was it same? Was it building the
Other
same
than
for the same?
pierceability, yes,
But there were some active transportation upgrades,
right, some.
including the tunnel? Or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all the details of it, but I do know from participating in the meetings and discussions that active transportation was a big part of the project and upgrading that tunnel that goes.
Yeah. I used it, so,
It's a good.
yeah, it's good.
You tell
It's
us.
obvious, yeah. It's nice not to ride with 70-kilometer traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, I think I'm good. So do you want to move this one?
Oh, can I have one more?
Sure.
On the public art, this is part of the budget, the bridge budget, right? As per council policy. Is it just a one-time? Is it a one-time cost, or are there reserves to upkeep the art piece over time? Do we
The art
require
piece.
that?
The cost of the art would be charged to the project, and then maintaining would just be our
I thought the art council maintained it, you know, the antler on, off of that emoji. I know the art council maintains some of these pieces.
I just know there wouldn't be an ongoing reserve or things set aside.
Okay,
Yeah.
because with a private group, we ask for a retainer, I think. Hey, I'm not sure.
I think I would imagine what the option selected, because if it's something that requires
Right, ongoing maintenance.
significant maintenance, then that work that into the selection criteria.
And is council still including artwork as part of its capital projects, like major capital projects?
Yeah, so
Yes,
the
policy.
capital projects that are currently approved and funded, they it would be baked in, but we know, as you're aware, we are looking at a change in program as part of the next multi-year, where a percentage of capital projects are being considered to be put together, pulled from every capital project being budgeted and pulled and put into a reserve, where art would be considered to be most impactful and visible.
Okay,
So that's, I think what council consideration now,
get a definition of what a major road is.
a major road.
Change the definition, makes the problem go away. Anyway, I'm good. Thank you, Councilor Roy, and to the administration for answers.
Okay, thank you very much. Motions made by Councillor Allard, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, report number 3, Pembina Highway overpass at Abenuchi-Mikina, report 1. A ceremony or something, it's just exciting.
Last
Sarah
report,
was
the
the
first
first open house this evening, but.
Correct.
Still, project is still forecast to be on time and on budget. This is the first quarterly report of the highways at making out, getting the way it works. Total project budget and estimated completion is $3.5 million, and expenditures to date are just under $1 million. The capital budget for the project has been adopted and approved. And an authorized first charge on 2026 has allowed the tendering to begin the entire construction. Project is currently at class 3, although this would be at the time of what we have since awarded the construction contract. Still within budget, happen to be mobilizing on Monday. So yeah, the next part of the tender is expected to be awarded by early May, which it was. And we're beginning construction next week. Southbound is 2025 and northbound is 2026. And the total for the substantial performance, basically the functional completion of the project is forecast for October 2nd, 2026. And primary risks are traffic impacts and their effect on schedule, increased construction and material costs, property acquisitions, and schedule delays for all of those.
Question.
Okay.
Councillor Weeks, Councillor Allard first, sure.
Well, yeah, in terms of the active transportation budgets, is that charging against any active transportation budgets, or is this like net new spending on active transportation?
We use the transportation budget as well, but
I don't.
It says on.
We're not drawing on any.
Well, no, I
We're not
guess.
drawing on anything from the PED and cycling program. This is being funded by the
Regional and local.
regional local program and the bridges.
Okay, that's good. Yeah,
Yes.
Mayor campaigned on that, so. Excellent.
So maybe you could just elaborate on this. As of the date of this report, the province hasn't confirmed the allocation of the strategic infrastructure basket funding to this project. I mean, my first question is, I thought we got a basket, we could apply it to what we want. But anyways, so the province hasn't confirmed funding to this project. As such, 4.399 million in funding has not been set up and is currently not available for this project. That's kind of important. But we've awarded it, we're proceeding. The funding issue will need to be resolved prior to the 2026 construction season. So I'm hearing the province hasn't confirmed this yet we're proceeding.
Yes.
Okay, so why would we not do that with the South Winnipeg Rec Campus if the province hasn't confirmed the funding? We were told just moments ago that we wouldn't be proceeding, but because it's a road, we're proceeding.
Well, those are two different funding sources. So
Right.
when we talk about the strategic infrastructure basket, we get annual approvals from the province through Treasury Board. We propose a slate of projects that
Right.
we would like to use the basket for. And they provide feedback. In recent months, they have indicated that they would like to allocate their provincial commitments under other granting streams like the ISIP stream and the CHIF stream. Which they're allocating to New Pick. They would like us to use the basket for that, which means that we would then change the funding sources between from what we would have otherwise funded New Pick with, which is a debt component, and basket funding. So it's really a funding swap. So the funding is available. It's just a matter of change in funding. Whereas the Southwest Rec Campus, that is the daycare and the vocational wing are 100% funded by other levels of government. And we don't want to proceed until they've committed any funding increases on their side so that we aren't on the hook for any additional funding that would be necessary. So those parts of the project we're not putting any funding towards, and we just want to make sure that they are on side with any increases in funding before we bring a decision to council for award recommendations under that. So we just want to make sure that we're not being charged any additional funding. In this case, in the case of this project, it's a matter of a funding swap between our internal funding sources. And then with the other one, it's a provincial funded project.
So when you say as such, 4.399 million funding has not been set up and is currently not available, what I'm hearing you saying is it's
It
just a
hasn't.
different funding source.
Yeah.
So it is available or it isn't available?
So it will either be basket funding or it will be debt that has displaced coming from the New Pick project. So it is available, but it's not confirmed what the funding source is.
So that might be better to write it in that.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense, that it is
Yeah.
available, just.
It is
the funding
available, it's just
source
not
isn't
confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah,
Because it sounds pretty dramatic that it's not available and we're
That's right.
proceeding,
that's right.
right? Okay.
And we
Okay.
are working with the province to speed up the 2025 basket allocations on especially some of these projects so that we have
Sure.
clarity.
Okay. Okay, got it. Just,
As long as that funding source is there for the next year's construction season,
Yeah.
we should be.
well, I mean, if it does end up in debt, I guess that's there, right? So there's that fallback, right? Okay, okay, so, now usually I get award letters telling me who the consultant is, the actual person. I know that it's Hirsch, that's now Stantec. Have the award letters gone out to people yet? Like when I have road construction, I get a letter saying, here's your consultant, here's your city guy, your PM. I guess so, yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the construction contract was awarded. It was under the delegated authorities to the CAO. He gotten that delegated authority to award from
Right.
$5 million and the contract was awarded to them.
Okay, but specifically, I get the names, the emails and the phone numbers in the
It's
letter.
the notice that goes to the.
Yes, yes.
I will double
If
check
you could
on
send that, that'd be great. I don't think I got it, but
Board was not too long ago, so that stuff's.
yeah, well, that's why I was
Let
wondering.
me start their Monday for them to.
Okay, okay, that, and then, yeah, once I have those sources, then all these other problems will be, if there's problems, will be worked through. Okay, yeah, this is a big project for the South End in the sense that this project's going on, the westbound Abinogi is going on, University Crescent is going on. And I'm still trying to find out from the Public Water and Waste Department, what's happening with the sewer pipe over the Fort Garry Bridge. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen this year. but when you're trying to get to longer things, then also, right?
Oh,
It'll be a good time. You should take your bike. Okay,
buses I take sometimes take the perimeter around.
oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay, well, we just had an open house on this project, so I have no questions. I get it.
Yeah, okay, Council, I'm gonna have to get up to speed on what's all being done there, but I will do so before the next update.
So there is no art though, before your question, there's no art in this one.
Oh, you saw it coming, did you?
Okay,
You saw my question?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to talk about that. I mean,
Well, the Fermor Bridge rehabilitation project explicitly put in $200,000 for the project costs. I think from the beginning, we knew there would be public art. I don't think the public art policy has changed. Why has the application of, why not? I mean, this is important road. It's been an important name change. It was art for Fermor Bridge. I'm talking about the report that doesn't have any funding allocated and or mention of public art. It does have active transportation, which I think is excellent. It does not have public art, which I think is, well, something I'd like to discuss more. Why this one, why not the other one?
I think that you look, Tracy spoke to it earlier, that there's a policy process for
Yeah.
government capital.
But that
I think
would,
it was pretty inconsistently applied in the past, which is why there's a desire to bring forward a program that makes a lot more sense and it's a lot more consistently applied. So I think we acknowledge that not consistently applied in the past and just point out
okay,
very obvious back-to-back examples.
right,
And that's why we're revisiting the policy.
well, if I recall correctly, in the past, there was a percentage allocation for major capital projects, and there was some kind of a threshold of what that percentage was. If it
That's what's being
if it-
proposed.
Right, if it was
Yeah.
applied inconsistently, I'm not sure what that was. Anyway,
So, good point.
I've heard
It is
the answer.
in this project, then, whatever comes of that will be through the budget process and that'll churn out next January or whatever. But in the meantime, this project's gonna proceed, right? So I don't know if we can amend this or before we approve it, or do we have another conversation on this, like out of a $35 million project, I'm sure we could at least find $250,000 art.
I'll second your motion, Councillor Lutz.
Okay, so do we amend this and just write it in right now?
We don't have $250 million sitting around unless you have a source.
Well, I think it's
Well,
more of a
with-
concept of like, you've got a budget,
Within the
Sure.
existing budget?
a certain percentage is allocated to, like, what class are we at right now? What class
Three.
budget are we at? 3. There's a lot of time for consideration of budgets and
And you can
inflation
take it to the budget working group.
and what is it called? Scope changes, expenditure
Don't mean to do
increase.
so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Correct.
This is a status report. There'd be a separate motion, I think, would be the way to,
And even then, if we're talking about specifics surrounding this project, that would likely be under the jurisdiction of Public Works, depending on what we're looking
their
at.
chair is pretty, never mind.
Okay, so what you're saying is it wouldn't come from here?
Correct, just because we're dealing with the actual Public Works project itself, whereas this project is just here as part of the major capital projects reporting schedule.
The critical path of this report ends here.
Correct.
How convenient.
Again, it's a financial update. It's not a,
How inconvenient, I should.
right.
Yeah.
In terms of policies on roads and art and that would be
Mhm.
correct, I think, under Public Works Committee.
Councillor Lutz, I would move to suspend the rules so that we could entertain new business at your committee, Public Works.
But I would just do that.
Are you on Public Works now?
Eh?
I'm proposing we do it now.
Well, no, are you on Public Works matter?
No, I'm proposing we suspend the rules to move a motion, which will presumably go to Public Works. Does that work out?
Like-
Community.
Okay, well, I will give you my trust then.
Good that we brought this up there,
Okay,
Mr. Allard.
Okay,
All right, I'll move this report.
thank you, Councillor Lutz. All's in favor?
Right.
Opposed, carried. Okay, number 4, financial implications of US tariffs on the city of Winnipeg.
Okay, so I consulted with Matt Dryberg
Thank you,
and
guys.
thank
Yeah,
you.
where's Matt?
I I'm at a break today. We didn't have a presentation in mind for you. For the first time since this whole tariff conversation started, there hasn't been any major changes in the tariff landscape. It usually changes by the minute. So to have a whole month where it's fairly quiet is unusual. And there's also no real costs that we've incurred yet to report. However, I can mention that we are talking proactively to many of our construction companies, including the one for the South Winnipeg Rec Campus. They were not, Councillor Lutz, you mentioned the language in the contract. That contract was signed before any of the tariff conversations started. So the contract for the vocational wing,
Oh, yeah.
right? Yes. And so, but that is, we are talking to them about tariffs. They've raised the tariff impacts on that. Things like HVAC systems often come up from the US. So they kind of flag that proactively with them. And so we're having conversations with them proactively on that. And because again, that's a provincial cost, that we are also therefore having conversations with the province about that too. So so that one's a little more complicated, but all the right conversations are happening. In our contract language, we did add back in February, and that's still in place, which is any new contracts signed, any new RFPs. We've put the onus on the contractor to, if there's going to be a cost escalation as a result of tariffs, that they demonstrate that they have done a scan and investigated alternative options for costs and find the best cost solution as it relates to the inputs into the project. So we do have a legal commitment from our contractors as a result of that.
So just to interject here for a minute.
Yeah.
So in the last presentation of April 17th.
Yep.
I guess it's probably in there. You've got it in there. That I had to leave that meeting at the end.
Yeah.
Because I don't see another, this is the first presentation on tariffs, wasn't it? The first,
It was the second one.
but I don't see a PDF for the first one. There was a presentation for the first one?
No, we've done two presentations.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. The first one very much
First
mirrored what was like in a council seminar, and then
I wouldn't mind.
You can make sure you
Is
have
the
both.
information in?
it is.
Yeah,
It is.
okay.
You can make sure you have both copies.
Yeah.
What I can also update is this week I attended a provincial buying group meeting. The province provided an update on the rollout and the implications of the Buy Canada Act that is being tabled.
Right.
It is for the most part no real surprises. They've always been talking about following the other trade agreements. That's still going to be in place. But also making clarity where they have a US commitment to purchase, that they will be looking to support Canadian or local businesses instead of American trading partners. They are looking to add clarity, and what's taking longer is what is a Canadian company. So it's not just a holding company with an like a box address in Canada. So they want to make sure that they define that with some clarity so that everyone understands how that proceeds. And of course, we're following really closely because we have a number of co-projects with the province. So to the extent that we certainly want to kind of mirror what they're doing, but also to make sure that there's not any new requirements under funding agreements that we already have with them
Right.
under these new rules for them. So those conversations are still proceeding, but they are being thoughtful, and it's going to take several more months before I think we have real clarity on some of this stuff.
Can we get actual numbers on expenditures and the actual dollars that we're spending?
Yeah, so $0 so far. We are tracking it. The accounting team has set up, so when we have a direct tariff, so where we're the importer of record. So when we're bringing in, products that are crossing the border and the border invoice has a tariff on it, we are tracking, we're set up to track those direct costs. Also for situations where we're working with a broker, or with a construction company that is importing project, materials that are for our use on a construction project. We have ways to track those costs as well. And so, there aren't a lot of those ripple effect costs where, Canadian ingredients have gone down to the US and are coming, back up as a manufactured item. That just takes time. But I suspect we'll start seeing those things. And the counter tariffs that Canada has imposed, hasn't really affected too many of the things that, we're directly purchasing from the US yet. So if you recall, our exposure on direct purchases was less than 1% of our spend. It really related to.
That's on operating.
Pardon me?
That was on operating, was it not?
Yes, no, on anything that we purchase directly from the US.
Oh.
And so, most of it is operating. It's, we'll buy some chemicals from the US. Those don't really have counter tariffs attached to them. We haven't, we're still under, our original contract with New Flyer as an example for buses. And so we're not expecting any real tariff impacts on that contract. We haven't really had to buy a lot of fleet vehicles, in this moment yet that have attracted tariffs. And the rest of the things that we purchase from the US are more like, services. Those don't attract tariffs yet either. So there hasn't really been, any flags. What we are seeing are some opportunistic companies that are, crying tariff as a reason to increase prices. And, we have a pretty, good network internally to make sure that we double check those and make sure that they, prove their claims that those are really tied to tariffs. It gets a lot muddier where they're now, some of their ingredients might be coming from China, and those are now large increase in costs associated with those for American companies. So I don't really, that's where it gets a little muddier. We're less sympathetic to other countries' tariffs, situations on the cost impacts, on things that have pre-purchased already, so.
I'm hearing that from developers too, is like, don't go for they're not paying any fees or they're not having been hit with big steel or HVAC prices as of yet. So,
Yeah.
Okay,
Else they could
That's
just,
good.
they could just
It's
have
coming.
Canadian corporate offices like, companies are doing in the US.
Yeah.
Like I am. So, Abinoji Mikina, at the time of writing this report, it's too early to determine the impacts and the level of risk and tariff risk on materials sourced from the USA are identified as a primary risk.
Yeah.
Like, are there contingency plans that are built into any capital project in the event where the source material is the US? Like, are there projects we should look at redesigning?
Yes, so the first part of your question is that none of the capital project amounts have been updated to include a tariff contingency. They just have the existing original contingencies that were included in the budget. Paul spoke at the last meeting about an estimate from an economist estimate of what we think that would look like on our total capital budget is what the impact of tariffs would be, and it was a range of kind of about 2 to 4%.
That's globally.
Of our total capital budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be at the high end. That's kind of a risk exposure amount versus anticipated spend. And so we feel that we can help mitigate and manage some of those additional costs through things like our contract language, where we are asking our contractors to maybe find a Canadian alternative if they're seeing a cost escalation on some of the ingredients that they've purchased. Some things will be hard to avoid, like steel. But we'll need to kind of keep those conversations going with our contractors.
It's
I'm
It is
thinking about,
tricky.
so like, let's say we're at a class 3, so it's already approved by council, it's going to build. But there's been like some kind of significant increase. Would that have some, would council automatically be apprised of that?
Oh,
Because
yes,
we
yeah.
might want to reevaluate some projects if the
I-
costs are really escalating on individual projects.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's certainly a topic that I would like to raise with the budget working group as far as if there's any projects that are particularly exposed to potential tariff impacts for consideration, but we can't, as you know, public service can't unilaterally increase our budgets on capital for things without coming to council. So you would certainly be apprised.
Okay, somebody ready to move this on?
I'll move it.
Thank you. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Somebody wants to move consent and adjournment?
I'll move.
Thank you, Counselor Lukes. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Done before your 11 o'clock
Yes.
request.